I mean, we've heard the inflation argument many, many times. I mean, for example, another big commodity investor, Jim Rogers, has said that we're going to get a wall of inflation because of all the central bank money printing. We just haven't had it yet. Don't you think that maybe, Mike, the inflation argument for gold is getting old?
Hi everyone, hope you guys are all doing well. You know, that video clip from MSNBC is pretty indicative of the mainline thinking coming out of the mainstream media, which basically argues that we don't have to worry about inflation anymore at this point. If anything, we need to actually worry about deflation. And not only is it seen in the mainstream media, but I also see it in some of the comments of not only my videos, but some of the videos that other silver stackers and gold bugs put out. It's basically comments from naysayers who are taking silver stackers to task, making them account for why we haven't seen a huge increase in inflation, particularly since the CPI is anywhere between 2 to 4% in a given year. But I also get messages and see comments in other videos from people who are genuinely into precious metals and who are using them as a hedge against inflation, and them legitimately wondering, you know, where is the inflation that we should be seeing at this point. So I thought I would just do a video to give my interpretation about not only why I think that the inflationary story of precious metals isn't over, but why I think that we haven't even ended the first chapter yet. So let's start looking at some of the charts here, and I should mention before we start that these are charts provided by the research arm of the St. Louis Fed, so we don't have to actually go looking for a needle in a haystack for a chart that basically proves our position. These are admitted numbers by the Federal Reserve itself. And the first chart here is the United States adjusted monetary base. And if you don't know what the monetary base is, it's the sum of all of the currency currently in circulation in the United States, including both coins and banknotes. And it also includes the deposits held by depository institutions at the Federal Reserve. And again, remember guys, depository institutions with the Fed, those aren't commercial banking institutions. So this doesn't include all the deposits that are held at commercial banks such as Wells Fargo or Bank of America. We're strictly talking about depository institutions at the Federal Reserve. So just looking at the chart, as you can see, we had pretty much a linear rise in the adjusted monetary base between the mid-1980s and all the way up to 2009, and then a huge explosion in 2009 of the monetary base. Pretty much since 2009, we've had a nominal increase of the adjusted monetary base of $2.35 trillion. And again, just let that sink in. Since 2009, the adjusted monetary base has increased $2.35 trillion. And just on a percentage increase, that's 261%, strictly speaking, since 2009. As a percentage of the total adjusted monetary base created after 2009, it's at 72%. So 72% of the current monetary base has been created since 2009. Again, that's pretty amazing. So we've seen, and again too, you can see actually on the chart here and here, that's exactly where they've initiated QE2 and QE3. And again, I'm just pointing that out because you might be asking, well, how did the monetary base expand so fast? Or even how much? And the answer to that is simply because of the QE programs that the Fed is running. Of course, as I mentioned in a previous video, just looking back at QE and how it affects my silver stacking, basically what the Fed does is they print up new money out of thin air, and then what they do is they exchange that new money for bonds and treasuries from the banking institutions, and then in exchange for those bonds, the bonds go onto the Fed balance sheets, and then the banks are sitting on new cash, which then they keep, of course, with these depository institutions at the Fed. Now again, another question which you might be having is, if the monetary base has increased so much since 2009, then why hasn't there been a subsequent increase in inflation? And to understand that answer, we have to look at the excess reserves held by depository institutions. So let's take a look at that chart now. Now looking at this second chart here, just by looking at it, if you look at the blue line from about the end of the 1950s up until the present day, you'd pretty much just have to look at this and say to yourself, you know, something seems a little out of the ordinary here, which is why I never get why people in the mainstream media don't understand inflation. But again, I guess I shouldn't be too surprised. Again, they're not there to actually understand economics or our current monetary or fiscal environment. But again, just looking at this here, we're looking at the excess reserves of depository institutions. Again, too, just to let you guys know what that is, those are deposits held by the depository institutions at the Fed. Again, we're not talking about commercial institutions. We're only talking about the Federal Reserve institutions here. So, just looking at this here, what we have is current reserves at $1.9 trillion. So again, when I explained earlier that the Fed prints up money and they exchange that money for bonds from the commercial banks, all that new money that the commercial banks get, they're not actually sitting on that within their own institutions as deposits. Basically, the Fed is holding on to that for them right now in their own depository institutions. So again, this money isn't being lent out, it's being held on reserve by the Fed. And just looking at this, not only are current reserves at 1.9 trillion, but the total adjusted monetary base that's currently sitting at reserves with these depository institutions is 59%. So 59% of the total adjusted monetary base is sitting as reserves. Again, not being lent out, just earning a very small percent of interest for these commercial banks. Again, too, the total monetary base since 2009 that's sitting as reserves is 81%. So all the new money that's been created since 2009, 81% of it is sitting as reserves, which pretty much, too, if you just think about it with common sense, that's pretty much the reason why we're not seeing a ton of inflation. It's not being lent out. What it's doing is just sitting as a reserve in these depository institutions, and 81% of that new money hasn't been lent out. And even too, it's not like that other 19% that we can just off the top of our head say, well, that's been lent out and should show an increase. We also have to remember that that too is being a lot of that's being left as reserves in commercial banks too. So we don't have even that 19% isn't out in the economy now chasing after the same amount of goods, which would cause a subsequent increase in price. So basically what I do is I look at these two charts and I draw a different conclusion from the mainstream media. I look at them, and just purely by looking at them, you can tell something is off. But again, if you dig a little deeper, you can see that, the inflationary story hasn't finished yet. Again, we have to wait until see what these excess reserves actually do once they start being lent out and actually entering into the economy and then having a huge effect on prices thereafter. Alright guys, so I just thought I would make this video just to demonstrate one of my reasons and just my interpretation again why we haven't seen a huge increase of inflation since 2009. Again, my argument is that we've only seen phase one of this whole inflation story, which isn't really a story. These are just facts. Again, we've only gotten through phase one, which is just the printing of the money creation. Again, we still have to wait for phase two of when this new money actually enters into the economy. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I'd really appreciate that. If you could also like and subscribe to the channel, that's always greatly appreciated. Alright, thank you very much for watching everyone. That's it for now, and I'll see you guys next video.